What surprised
Absolutely.
you about the blue zones? Because you've been to Sardinia was one you visited,
Yeah,
correct?
yeah. Yeah. And that was the one we spent the most time in, and was, first of all, everything that you've heard about the longevity and the populations and how again not only lifespan but health span
Yeah.
and physically and mentally fit even in past 100 is spot on. I mean, what we experienced there was spot on. The amount of just natural exercise that people got on a regular basis was spot on. The fact that there's a particular variety of wine that is one of the things in Sardinia. I think it's a Cantaloupe grape. I forget how to pronounce it. That is supposed to be one of these things helping with the longevity. I don't know if it helps it or not, but they do drink a good bit of it for sure. The diet, though, what the makeup of the diet was the exact opposite of everything that I had ever
Right.
learned.
It's pushed
You
as very plant heavy, right? Bordering on vegetarianism and vegan.
It was 100% the exact opposite. I mean, not only was the basis of everything animals, but it was the entirety of the animal. And in fact, it was quite beautiful. And I know that's a strange word when we're talking about organ meats and intestines and things like that. The amount of intestines that were consumed would blow your
Mm.
mind. So the first meal that we had there, so the one family we were staying with, let me back up. The reason we were actually going, and it took me about 8 or 9 years to make the contacts I needed for the main purpose for this research trip. We were actually going to learn about a particular type of bread called panaspelli, which is an ancient bread that's made with acorns, and it's made with acorns using clay and using ash to detoxify the acorns. And
Wow.
Pliny the Elder writes about it. I mean, it's this wonderful thing. In fact, it's considered to be the precursor to modern polenta. So this went from acorns,
Wow.
eventually got replaced by chestnuts, and then eventually got replaced by maize when maize came over from the New World. But at the time I learned about it, I'm very one of the things that I focus on in my research is or traditional ways of detoxifying plants. And something that comes up repeatedly is the role of clay and ash
Mm.
in different contexts in Bolivia and California, all sorts of places. But when I heard about this bread, I'm like, I have to go and learn how to make this bread. And I tried to find somebody that can make it, tried to find somebody that can make it. And everybody told me, no, everybody's dead that ever made this bread. You're never going to find out you're never going to be able to make this bread. And you can read about it. And I would read about it, but there's no good accounts on how to make this bread.
Right.
So I finally caught a break, and this went on for years and years and years. And then I finally caught a break several years ago where the oak tree that the acorns that make this bread come from, there was some national park service in Italy thing being done to protect these trees, and they went out and they found somebody in this village that knew how to make this bread still. And I, through a couple of different people, were able to contact her. And it turns out she was too old to show. I mean, she was very, very old
Wow.
to show anybody, but she had shown her son. So we went to learn from her son, which was fantastic.
It's
And
so
and
cool.
the person that was the contact with her is this food historian in Sardinia, this woman Gisela Rubio. And she said, "You come visit me first, and you spend some time with us." I said, okay. Well, we went to visit her in this really remote area, and it was the village of Villa Grande, which turns out to be the epicenter of the first blue zone ever identified. And it was purely by coincidence. And when I realized that's where we were, I'm like, wow. And I started documenting everything. And so the first night we were there, the big meal is they had it was a big, huge hunk of meat from a lamb, and then they took all the intestines and wrapped it next to it, and the whole thing was on a rotisserie this entire time. And
Oh
we
wow.
ate all the intestines. We ate the meat and and we see this thing repeated over and over again. We made a cheese called Caio de Cabretto, which you make from a very young unweaned goat. But after we took the stomach out of this goat, for that, we literally ate every single. It was called Satritalia. They took so we're up in the mountains with these shepherds making this cheese, and they built this really long fire, and they took the motors that run the windshield wipers in the vehicles, and they made these rotisserie things with them. And they had two, one on either side of this really long fire. And on one side, on one rotisserie, they took all the meat and bones, including the head, the eyeballs, the whole thing, and they were
Yeah.
able to cut it in a way that it went the entire way of the skewer. So every bit of meat and bone was there. And on the other side, they took all the organs, except for the stomach, which we had already for the cheese. They took all the organs and cubed them up and put them on a skewer like a kebab. And then they took the small intestines, didn't even wash it out with the contents, wrapped it around it like yarn, and then they took the large intestines, which they did rinse out, and then wrapped that around, and they just went on these kebabs. And I have to tell you, it was
Wow.
absolutely delicious. But this is the reality of the Blue Zone. Every time we went and visited somebody, the first thing they did was they brought out some of the cheese they'd made and cured meats that they had, and that you sat down and had this, and over and over and over again. It was the massive amount of animal, not I don't want to say meat, animal,
Right.
massive amount of cheese. And then did they eat vegetables? Yes, they were, but they were the afterthought. I mean, there was obviously some tomatoes, there were some olives, there was some lettuce, arugula, garlic, onions, and I think that's about it.
Yeah.
And they laughed. They laughed because the house we were staying in, BBC had come and done about a year and a half earlier had done a special on, and all they wanted to know the BBC because the Blue Zone. I guess minestrone soup is supposed to be a big thing in Sardinia, and they're like they keep asking us about minestrone soup, and I have no idea what they're talking about.
They're like with the real stuff, they're not even asking about. It's so interesting. It's very cool to have that experience, man. And they are doing, I mean, our whole message, Heart and Soil, is nose to tail.
Yeah,
And unfortunately, because it's so hard to find here, or people kind of grossed out by it, they don't want to cook it. We've, desiccated them and put them in pills to try and make that dense level of nutrition available to people. But it's really cool to hear people are still out there doing it truly the way our ancestors probably did forever, because why would they waste any part of the animal? It makes no sense, right? And I like that distinction you made between meat and animal. Like,
yeah,
we just think when we say meat based or an animal based diet, people just immediately get visions of fillets or ribeyes in the head. But there's a whole host of the animal that you're not thinking about, and missing out on this connective tissue, the bone marrow, the organs, the heart, the livers, spleens, pancreas, kidneys, testicles, even. It's
yeah.
all edible. It's all edible. All right, friends, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Radical Health Radio. We got a fresh new podcast for you every Wednesday. If you enjoyed the show, consider liking, subscribing, reviewing, and rating us on your podcast platform. It helps us spread this message of radical health. We'll see you next week.